Ready for a shocker? Gen V isn't just a good show. It's a great show. I know. The trailer was so bad. We laughed at it together. But now I've watched the first 6 of 8 episodes. They wouldn't give me the last 2. They were like, this is too powerful stuff for you to have right now. Apparently the last 2 episodes are so explosive, they're nervous about spoilers getting out. But I gotta tell you, 1 through 6 was pretty darn explosive. So 7 and 8 must be freaking dynamite. I guess nuclear. It's amazing. And I have to say, once I finished episode 6 and I saw the cliffhanger ending to that episode, I was like, this might be as good as The Boys. I know! Of course you don't believe me. You have to watch the show. Now, while The Boys is a take on the Avengers and Justice League, Gen V is, get this, XMen. Now, some of you might already know that going in because it's based on a storyline from the Boys comic that also was a satire of the X-Men. But that was very much like the X-Men, but this is looser. This is more the school aspect of the X-Men, but there isn't like a Professor Xavier type character. So, but it's there. I was watching it and I was like, because I was unfamiliar with the Boys storyline in the comics. So, but I was like, you're doing X-Men. And you would think maybe as an X-Men super fan, which is me, and I know many of you, maybe I'd be insulted and I'd be like, how dare you make fun of the X-Men? But it's just as edgy and biting and on the nose an adaptation of doing the X-Men Boys style as it is doing the Avengers and Justice League. So I'm having a great time and it feels fresh because it's a different setup. It's not just a junior team of, the 7. Now, I didn't feel Gen V was as good as The Boys at first. I want to tell you the evolution of how I felt about the show so you don't watch the first episode and go, what's Grace talking about? All right, so after I watched the first episode, which a lot happened, I was like, they might have something here. And I excitedly watched episode 2. Don't worry, you can watch 3 episodes this Friday before it goes weekly. You'll get 3 episodes. And once I watch the first 3, and you will definitely watch them. If you get to the end of episode 1, they'll get you. But I was like, this is a really cool show. This is a surprisingly cool show. But then the next night, I watched 4, 5, and 6 right in a row, which was so great. Like 1 through 3 are about 45 minutes each, but then they start getting a little shorter. They're around 35 minutes. But I gotta tell you, they did not feel short because so much happens in each episode. But after 4, 5, and 6, and the story was leveling up so rapidly and clearly and effectively creating the Boys cinematic universe, I was like, this is incredible that they actually have accomplished this, because I never thought they could do a The Boys spin-off without really any of the characters from that show successfully. And yet, here they are. Oh, I can't wait for you to watch the show. And don't worry, no spoilers in this review, because I want you to have the surprises that I did. And so on that note, don't wait to binge this show. You're gonna have to join the party as it unfolds, because each episode not only has a lot of surprises, but it has really cool scenes, and those will be ruined for you. Every episode, I found myself simultaneously thinking, wow, and that's surprisingly impressive, especially because I had such low expectations for the show, and I never thought it could be anywhere near the level of The Boys. So it kept surprising me as it met the bar and then would push the bar higher and then meet that. I was like, wow. Now, this is also fascinatingly the opposite of a Disney Plus show, in that it does not have any of the problems that they consistently have over there. The pacing is very fast. Tons of stuff is happening each episode that has huge ramifications, not just for the show, but as the series progresses for the Boys cinematic universe. I'd heard rumors that I actually heard from a source that this had to come out before The Boys season 4 because it sets up The Boys season 4. And I was like, really? But it does. You're gonna be missing a lot if you just jump right to The Boys season 4 without seeing this show. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. Because then why would anybody watch this show? But Huge stuff is happening here. That is, I think, you can obviously, I haven't seen the last 2 episodes, but I can already see how this is a game changer for the overall storyline. And they use a lot of VFX each week. That's something that really surprised me, because it's a spin-off show, and then based on what we saw in the trailer, maybe the VFX weren't ready in time. But I thought they were going to cheap out, but they did not. Characters use their powers all the time on this show in really fun and exciting and inventive ways, which is part of the fun of the XMen, by the way. You're like, oh, how could you use that power? And you're like, oh, that's awesome. Or how could you use your powers together, like more than one person? How could you team up? And they do that here. In fact, there's more use of powers on this show than on The Boys, which I did not expect. And I wonder if because of the success of The Boys, which itself leveled up in season 3, but maybe season 4 will have even more powers being used if they're willing to spend this kind of money on Gen V. And Gen V is a mystery, which is great because, instead of having multiple storylines involving different characters, and some you care for and some you don't, here, everything is working towards solving and deepening this mystery. So that means every scene is rewarding because it's all working towards the same purpose. And I would say very few, if any, scenes, at least for me, dragged. And so I thought that was great to see everything working towards a singular goal, story-wise. And it's a great mystery. I loved it. Several times so far, I have found myself genuinely surprised by the twists and turns. And I read a lot of comics, so you think it would be hard to get me, but I was like, oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Now, how can you have The Boys show, right, without that incredible cast? Now, part of the thing they do is they bring over a couple of the supporting characters, and you're like, oh yeah, there's that character and that one, and they show up in the first 6 episodes. A big deal was made about Soldier Boy. They spoiled that themselves the other day, and I must say, his cameo was fantastic. But they have done a great job casting this show in its own right. Jazz Sinclair and Chance Perdomo, both from Sabrina on Netflix, by the way, where they were fantastic. I'm so happy for them because they level up from supporting characters to true leads. They are excellent on this show. Sinclair's character, Marie Moreau, like the island of Dr. Moreau, I love her name. She can manipulate blood, which you've seen in the trailers, and I thought that would be a useless power, but oh wow, did they come up with some brilliant ways to use that. And they're not even done. She's still learning her powers, and I'm like, this is really great so far. And he is a Magneto-type character. He hasn't flown anywhere yet, but he does a lot of metal manipulating. I was surprised. With the same powers as his dad, by the way, Polarity, played by Sean Patrick Thomas, a former superhero himself. And while at first I did not like Lizzie Broadway, I was like, this character is annoying. She's basically the show's Ant-Man. She quickly became one of my favorites. What's going on with her is so interesting. Maddie Phillips also does a nice job as a character with mind control powers that she has to touch you to use them. And I have to say, well, at first he seemed like a poor man's Homelander, which is, I think, what he's supposed to be. Patrick Schwarzenegger's Human Torch is not bad, actually. And he's literally called Golden Boy, by the way. And at first, he seemed a little cliche. But as the show progresses, I was like, oh, this is actually not bad. And while the Maria Shriver genes are strong, I started to see a little Arnold in there. Derek Liu and London Thor have a particularly interesting role. This is going to divide people who watch the show. I hope it doesn't, because it's great. It's so interesting. But this is a bi student who can switch genders, and each gender has a different power. That was great. One is invulnerability, and the other, I think, is sonic waves. They haven't really established it particularly well, but I can say that this character might be the most powerful of the bunch. Certainly the best brawler. But Vought worries how they'll play in the Midwest because, they're all interested in audience scores and stuff like that and broad appeal. So it's a really interesting problem to explore that this student isn't getting their due and the attention they deserve because of worries about how they'll play in the heartland. And so that is a really interesting thing to look at. And I think that Derek Liu and London Thor make you believe that they are the same person. It's really, really, I think this is very interesting what they're doing there. Now, in the advertising for this show, it came off as a blatant and lame attempt to seem cool and current, right? We were like, come on. But I have to say, once I actually saw the show and I saw everything unfold at the correct pacing and in context, I actually think it's surprisingly authentic. I was like, oh wow, this is modern. This is very cool and current. I think, it's very much ripped from social media. Really, really good. I hope that social media likes this show. It certainly is made to play for social media. There's lots to tweet about. Stay off Twitter while it's airing until you watch it. I sure hope people are talking about it. I also think they made a lot of these choices to counter the more conservative element of The Boys, which are tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time have won that show a conservative following. But I think all audiences can appreciate the biting satire that The Boys is famous for as a brand and as at play here as well, which takes on, in fact, both sides of the political spectrum. Nobody is safe. They're making fun of everybody. But also, like The Boys, Gen V, as I said, is incredibly current. I think not only in its commentary, but again, in its satire. That's very important. Wait until you see, by the way, how current this show is. I am shocked with some of the things they're taking on. And I'm so impressed that the writer's room is willing to go there and that they don't want to wait to see apparently The Boys' writer's room never asks, is it too soon? They're like, heck yeah, let's do it. And I'm very, very impressed. And so nobody and nothing is safe from the aggressive commentary on this show. And I think because they often hit a bullseye, even if you don't agree with what they're saying, you're like, you have to respect it. And you're like, I got to say, that's interesting. And I think you bring up a lot of very, real points. Vought, by the way, is all over this show with their different divisions, right? And I couldn't find her name in the materials, but the woman who plays the publicist is fantastic. And also they have someone playing their social media person, and they have really classic Vought lines that we all love. Godolkin University, aka God U, is also very cleverly thought up with very interesting majors and classes that I don't want to spoil for you. Wait until you see them. But it's just a very realistic look at the business of not just being a superhero, but also the business of being a celebrity and the reality that not every person whose parent pumps them up with V as a baby is going to be able to become a superhero. So what else could those supers do? How could Vought make money off of them? And that's really very much what this show is about. It's really Vought through God U, funneling all these supers that have been created into, it's like creating a business and all the different divisions of, say, like a studio, or even more so a major conglomerate, which is in a lot of different businesses. And I think that stuff's great. And it's not just all about college-age superheroes either. I was delighted to see new superheroes, at least one from The Boys comic, finally show up here after being talked a lot about on The Boys. You might have heard who it is, but I don't want to spoil it. But they did not disappoint, although substantial changes were made from the comic to the point that they really aren't even the same character. But I didn't care because they turned out fantastic. Not only as a very cool superhero, I loved their power set. I loved what they did with it. But so that was great for the story too. And it was so Vought. It was so Vought from top to bottom. The show is, in true Boys fashion, I also need to point out, incredibly raunchy and graphic. I would say more so than The Boys Season 3. Whew, very, very graphic, which again makes me wonder what The Boys Season 4 might be like. Will that season go even further than this? But Gen V is a hard R. It is more R than any season of The Boys to date. And The Boys was very hard R. This is extremely over the top. And I think when you're starting out the show, you're like, do you really need to do that? Isn't that a bit much? But I have to say, I decided that they earned it. They earned it every single time. And also, this is The Boys brand. And so, again, be careful who you watch it with, be careful who you recommend it to, but I'm loving it. I think it's fantastic. So it turns out Gen V is more The Boys goodness. It's so good. And I'll be breaking the episodes down weekly. I hope there's enough interest for me to be able to keep doing it, but I'll certainly do the first 3. I don't see how we couldn't. There's so much stuff for us to talk about also in 4, 5, and 6. I mean, it's so much. There's so much. Each one is just jam-packed with cool stuff and story and Easter eggs. It's a fantastic viewing experience. So share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. Again, see you Friday for the breakdown. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.